Carolyn Dube here. What's the play for today? It's gel printing with PanPastels. And yes, you absolutely can use those on a plate. When you're using PanPastels on a gel plate though, they do behave differently than when you're using them on paper alone. And that is a great thing because that opens up so many techniques and different looks for your prints that you couldn't get any other way with PanPastels than using them with a gel plate. Well, let's dive in and make a print. To create some pattern on the gel plate, I'm going to be using this rainbow quote stencil. I'm not going to be using entire quotes, we're just going to be using pieces and parts here on this 3x5 gel plate. First thing I'm going to do is flip that stencil over because words go onto the gel plate backwards. Then it's simply a matter of taking some of that PanPastel and sponging it onto the plate. I'm not going to do every word or complete words, I'm just going to do bits and pieces of it. I'm going to lift up the stencil, reposition it, and grab another color and take some more bits and pieces of words on there. One of the really great things about using PanPastels on a gel plate is when you do layers like I did yellow, I did green, now I'm feeling a little bit of blue, you don't have to wait for anything to dry. You can just come right in there and put the next layer on top. And that's because PanPastels are dry. The most common kind of soft pastel is a stick pastel, and maybe you've used those. And basically, it's a bunch of powder pressed into that stick form. But in order to get that color, that pigment, that wonderfulness to stay in that form, you've got to add some binders, things that'll keep it in that shape. But with PanPastels, what they do is they take the powder and they press it into the pan, so you don't have all of those binders, that other stuff, which is part of the reason why these are such creamy, pigmented, amazing colors to play with. And if you can't tell, I am smitten with PanPastels. But this wasn't always the case. I actually had these for a long time, and I didn't use them very often. Now, I've always loved the colors in them, and I've always thought they're fantastic. I mean, they blend so beautifully. But the big reason why I didn't pull them out and use them very often is because I like to work in layers. And with a soft pastel, if you want it to fix it or have it stay where it is, you're going to need to seal the layers before you add something on top. And that was the big reason why I didn't use them as often as I could have, simply because I didn't want to take the time to seal layers. But what I did find is when I played with them on a gel plate, the process of taking the pull seals in the PanPastel, so that step doesn't have to be done when you're using them on a gel plate. And once that big obstacle of sealing was out of the way for me, I went to town playing with these things. There are so many different looks, so many different ways you can create prints with PanPastels. Another perk of using PanPastels is it's really easy to get crisp lines when you're stenciling. All these words that I'm doing here, wonderful crisp edges, nothing's running underneath because what I'm using is a powder. It's dry, so it's not going to run underneath your stencils. As I'm adding the layers on here, part of this is random and part of it isn't. So the early layers, like what I'm doing here, of putting the words on, the parts of words, what word I'm using is actually random. I'm just picking a different spot on the stencil and sticking it on there. What isn't random is the color. I'm making sure I've got a little bit of rainbow everywhere, so I'm thinking about where those colors are going to go, and if there's any area that seems like there's an opening or a gap, I'm going to fill that in with a color. And that's what I did right there with the word love. This is also the turning point in terms of the randomness. Before the word love, those words were random, but now I've specifically chosen one word that I'm repeating in its entirety in several places there on the plate. And because I did it in that wonderful bright magenta, it is really going to stand out and pop on the final pull. I'm also going to add little touches of the word love trailing off of the ends of the plate. I love what that does to a pattern when you're doing that, so I like to have things hanging off the edge whenever possible. There's still a little space on here where I can add some more words, so I'm going to pick another word intentionally to place on here. And that first word being love, the second word being colors. Because, well, I'm putting all those layers of the rainbow in here, and with all that color going on there, one after the other, none of it is becoming mud. This is getting pretty close to being full and finished, and I'm just going to check it over to see if there are any areas that I feel like are missing any color. If I notice any gaps like that anywhere, I'm simply going to come in and touch up with a little bit of color. But I think we've just about got everything on here, and now we need to take this pull. Because PanPastel is completely dry, if you were to put a piece of paper on this and lift it up, nothing would come up. That's why you need to put a thin layer of white paint on here. And when I say a thin layer, I mean truly a thin layer. You do not need much to pull up all those PanPastels. One way to know that you've got a really thin layer of paint on there is because you can see the pattern underneath it. Now what I'm going to do is put the paper on top of it. This is simply a 4x6 index card, nothing fancy. It's a really cheap one from an office store. Then what I'm going to do is give it about 30 seconds to dry. Magically, here we are in the future. And as I'm lifting up this print, you may notice that there's still some PanPastel left on the plate. There's an easy way to clean that off, and I'll show you that at the end of the video. Because we use that acrylic paint, this stuff is now fixed. It's not going to smear on you. Now that is just one kind of print that you can make with PanPastels. Here is another one. And what makes it possible to make such wildly different prints with this? Well, that's because of the superpowers. You see, PanPastel, its superpower is blending. And a gel plate superpower, it's layering. And when you understand how both of those work and how they work together, why they work together, then you can make a wide variety of prints. I've taken everything that I've learned playing with PanPastels on a gel plate and put it into an online workshop called Gel Printing with PanPastels. Now in here, you will see step by step every technique. You're going to get that how, but more importantly, you're going to get the why. You're going to know why decisions were made that way, why the supplies behave the way they do, because that's where the real understanding comes in. Because if you don't have both the how and the why, gel printing can feel extremely random. Another way you can use PanPastels is to do some reverse stenciling. So grab a stencil that you love, use the technique to get the PanPastel onto the plate, and then it's simply bring in the paint to take the pull. And you can do it with white paint, or you can play around with doing it in colors too. This print, this one is also reverse stenciling. Now, it's got a whole lot more color going on it than our last one, and that's because it's taken full advantage of the superpower of PanPastels, which is blending. But let's say you want something a little more subtle or something that looks a little more like shading. You can do that too. There are nuances to a technique like this, and that's why it's so important to really understand the why of what's happening on the plate. Now in the workshop, I will do things like side-by-side comparisons for you, where I'm just adjusting one aspect of it, making a change in one place so you can see what that outcome is to really fully understand the why of the technique. Because of the way a gel plate works, you're able to get crisp, sharp lines like the red hearts in this print, or you can get that wonderful, soft, blended look like the background colors. So what kind of experience do you need to have with gel printing to take this workshop? None, absolutely none, truly. Your gel plate can still be in that original package. And that's because everything is explained step by step in this workshop. And for those of you that have been gel printing a while, this workshop is focusing on using PanPastels on the plate. And they do behave very, very differently than paint and open up a world of techniques that you can't do with paint alone. As well as you get to see the entire process step by step. Those hows and whys can really help you take your prints up to that next level. Anytime you've got some residual PanPastel on your plate that you want to get off, all you need is a little baby oil and a paper towel to wipe it off with. Now you might be wondering, is this going to bother the plate? Nah, this is like giving that thing a spa day. It loves having that baby oil on it. So the gel plates are having a good time. What about you? Are you ready to have some fun making prints? Then gel printing with PanPastels might be just the workshop for you. You can check out all the details of the workshop over on my website at acolorfuljourney.com. And yep, there's a link down below for you. But in a nutshell, this workshop is 19 lessons. The videos in those lessons, they're all downloadable. You've got lifetime access, and this is a self-paced workshop. So that means as soon as you're registered, you've got access to all of those lessons. And on top of that, there is a 14-day money-back guarantee because it's really important to me that you have the workshop that's right for you. Oh, and then on top of that, I forgot to mention there are 5 bonuses. And in there is probably my favorite technique with PanPastels, the color explosion one. But all of those bonuses, those are also included for you in this workshop. Registration is now open, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the workshop. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.